We start with a new author. We have the English philosopher and political thinker John Locke. And to begin with what's simple, Locke is his name. That's how you say it. It has a silent E on the end. It's like the common word lock. You lock your car and open the lock with a key. But if you're spelling the name, you add the E on the end. Do not call him John. If you use one name, call him Locke. You should get in this habit, all Western names, if you speak about them from an academic distance, as we'll speak about John Locke. He's not a friend of ours that we would call John. In all those cases, you use the surname or the last name. It's a mistake to refer to well-known people by their first name. And if you do make that mistake, make sure you don't make it with people named John. John is the single most common name in the English-speaking world. There are literally thousands of well-known people called John. If you call him John, nobody will know what you're talking about. And if they do know what they're talking about, they will recognize you as somebody who doesn't really understand the habits of people who speak English. So that's a thing you should get straight from your AUIS education. You can see from his dates that he lived between Descartes and Rousseau. He pretty much fills the gap. So we're not moving forward in time. We are changing our focus more to the ways of politics and taking it off science somewhat. To step back and look at the larger picture of our semester, what are we trying to do? We're trying to understand what it means to be modern. Is that really a difference? Are modern people decisively different from the people of the past? Or are the changes not so important? Is human life always the same? Well, if we look at the markers of modern times, what is it to be a modern individual, and how do the times influence you if you do live in these recent centuries? Well, science is different, which is to say what it means to know something is different. The certainties of religion take a diminished place. They're smaller, they matter less than they used to. And a hard, reasonable look at the evidence of the world takes a greater prominence. And also democracy. We do politics in a different way. There's a new organization of our communities that is now standard. It's our default. The common people run everything. That used to be rare in the pre-modern century. So just taking a simple look at the modern world, it's marked by these two distinctive things. Science is our way to know things, and democracy is our way to organize things, to run things at the highest level. And we can say that science is experimental. You can even call it Cartesian. The cart comes from Descartes, who set down his scientific method. We have special modern ways of looking at the world. We've had our discussion of that. Democracy is distinctive in that it's liberal democracy. There were a few democracies in the ancient world. Athens was famous for it. They were imperfect democracies, and they were famous for not working very well. We added a twist in the modern world. Before the modern centuries, democracy had a clearer and simpler meaning. It was ruled by the common people. You could put one person in charge. That was a monarchy or a kingship. You could put the upper class in charge. That was an aristocracy ruled by the best, at least the best, the highest class. Or you could have a democracy ruled by the demos. That was the common people. And the upper classes were under the power of the workers and the farmers and the ordinary types. But we put a twist on democracy in the modern world that makes it distinctive, that it is liberal, that is, it's concerned with rights, That means that individuals get a small share of freedom, small but important. In a way, everyone is a king or a queen under modern democracy. Everybody has absolute authority over a small area. And Locke is going to lead us on an investigation of democracy with that particular twist on it. What we see in liberal democracy are distinctive things about the world around us, that we are especially alert to the differences between ourselves among each other, and we're aware that certain arguments never come to a conclusion, and that we should simply accept that they cannot be finished and cannot be publicly decided. And this is a justification for leaving each of us in charge of our own decisions in a small way. You do not have special power over others, but nevertheless in an important way. You can make your own decisions even about the most important things, even about the highest power in the universe and how you relate to that power. So the distinctive mark that Locke is going to show us that has been introduced to modern democracy is that it's not simply one more way of giving out the power in society, and a way in which that power remains absolute. In democracy, by the old way, the common people can make whatever decision they want, just as in an aristocracy, the aristocracy can make their decisions, or in a monarchy, the king can make his decisions. That's not how modern democracy functions. There are limits on the government power, because everyone is the monarch over a small sphere. And this turns the consideration of justice somewhat upside down. In a way, it makes it more anarchic, because as students always remind me, we all have different ideas about justice. But if that thought springs readily to mind, that means you're a citizen of modern centuries. But the modern ways of democracy also mean that it's the citizens that demand justice from the state. That's backwards if we look at the traditional way. Traditionally, it's states that demand virtue from their subjects. In a traditional society, the important test is whether the subject of the state, the subject of the nation or the country, is willing to sacrifice for the common good. But we turn things upside down in the modern world. The important decision is whether the state is granting liberty, basic freedom to the citizens, and respecting the decisions that by nature and by right belong to each individual citizen. And we are looking at Locke's arguments about religious freedom, but our interest is broader than that. We are concerned with the general topic of individual liberty. We're trying to see what the argument for that is, how it works, what changes it makes on the individuals who live within a society. So Locke starts his treatise without any recognized overall introduction. He just jumps right into what he considers to be the most important argument. So let's look at that now. I just put up on the screen the first sentence. You can find it on page 1, although it's not the first page of the reader, it's the third book in. He brings up this question of toleration as his subject. What is toleration? I think we know the answer to that. I'll pray to God in my way. You pray in your way. And I won't hold it against you that your way is different from mine, and I will demand the same respect from you. The differences we will treat as unimportant, immaterial, not relevant to our dealings with one another. And Locke wrote this short book in order to ask the question, is that toleration the best way to go? Is that the best organization for society? Now, Locke lived in uncertain times, the early modern centuries that we're looking at with our first 3 authors were the time of much upheaval and a lot of fighting over religion. Europe could not decide on one religion, although they all remained Christian. As you know, religions are bound to break up into sects and divisions, and the disagreements between those parts of the same religion can be quite fierce, quite hostile, quite violent. And European society had been upset in many disastrous and deadly ways for the centuries before Locke and during his lifetime. Locke was English, but he spent time in the European continent, sometimes in France, so switching from a Protestant country to a Catholic country, from one main sect of Christianity to the opposite, and often in the Netherlands. As we were reminded by Descartes, the Netherlands then is now a home of personal freedom. So Locke, without bothering with any other sort of introduction, jumps right into an argument about what is the true Christianity. And since he puts that so prominently up front, we're allowed to believe that that's a very important argument for him and worth our time to get straight. What he's going to do is to lay out a distinctive modern form of an argument about what's true. You will recognize it, and I think you will probably see that you have taken this argument to heart, that it's a basic part of your own thinking. That's part of our interest in reading this book. What Locke says is what matters less than what the right answer is your attitude toward it. And that attitude should be one of humility. More important than finding the right answer is your recognition that there are no permanent or publicly available obvious right answers.